a giant disruptor in the online retail space, and a juggernaut known for its relentless innovation and think big technologies. This is Amazon. It all started in Washington in a garage selling books in 1994, and on 15th of May 1997, Amazon's IPO price was 18 Rand a share. Today, 14th May 2021, the price is sitting at around $3,200. $386 billion in revenue in 2020, $23 billion in operating profit across 1.3 million employees and 200 million Amazon Prime customers. Do you want to know how all this is done? Well, you're listening to the right podcast today. Hello from me, Roshni Gajjar, and thank you for joining episode 12 of Lift as We Rise. I'm speaking today to Manan Patel, Program Manager at Amazon, who joins us live from Seattle. Manan is a former investment analyst and financial reporting specialist. He was at JP Morgan Chase, previously at BNY Mellon, and also at DuPont before joining Amazon a year back. Manan, I have really been looking forward to this conversation. Thank you for taking time out to speak to us and to our listeners today.
Thank you, Roshni. It's a pleasure to be here and obviously share my experience and whatever you have on the plate with the audience. More than happy to help whoever people, as much audience as I can.
Fantastic, Manan. You know, whenever I think of Seattle, one of my favorite songs is by Tasman Archer, Seattle Satellite. So what's happening in Seattle today and how are you all doing there?
Seattle is doing great. Actually, it's picking up. I recently moved a few months ago during pandemic in the winter time, so it didn't get to as great of an experience moving in. But as the weather gets warmer, it's pretty decent. The state is opening up. The weather is getting better and better every day as we move closer to the summer times. So yeah, it's great, near to the water, near to the mountains, great people, great food. Obviously, headquartered for one of the biggest tech companies. So wherever I go, I'm always around Amazonians and Microsoft and Google and Apple people. So it's a pretty great place to network and meet some of the great resources in mind. So.
Fantastic, and good coffee, I'm sure.
Oh yes, I forgot to mention about that. I'm getting addicted to a little bit, so I have to cut back on that.
Right. Manan, there was a huge buzz when I announced this podcast, and many people listening in today are aspiring future employees for Amazon, entrepreneurs, business leaders, and of course, some investors. So before we kick off, I thought that it would be appropriate to put a small disclaimer out there and just to share with our listeners that Manan is sharing his experiences and insights with us today for your interest. And if you'd like to make any decisions, then rather go and have a look at the website, read up on the official Amazon information, and you can take it from there.
Great.
So Manan, you are working for LinkedIn's #1 global company and Forbes' second best employer to work with in the world. Your former employer, JP Morgan Chase, ranks 8th on the Forbes list. So you seem to be moving to high performance companies. We know that Amazon believe in hiring and developing only the best leaders and innovators. Tell us your story. How did you get from financial services into Amazon? And what did you do to get into the leadership space at Amazon?
Well, I have a little interesting way to put it. It took 12 years, 15 years of high school, 6 years of college, a bunch of wisdom, a little bit of failure, good corporate experiences, great leaders, great mentors, support from family, and everything combined. I think that brought me to Amazon. But no, the interesting fact is basically I was in this finance and reporting space, pretty comfortable in my space. It was a pinch of luck and my instinct that brought me to Amazon. I didn't apply for the job. An Amazon recruiter reached out to me on LinkedIn. So usually I didn't know before I was hired that they had like accounting, every business in accounting, or I must say for the business that I'm part of, accounting side, they have an annual hiring event. So what they do is basically the recruiters, they search for the potential candidates on LinkedIn and other platforms. They reach out to them that we have a hiring event. Would you like to be part of it? And then if the candidate respond, the recruiter have a brief chat. And they usually, I wasn't because of the pandemic, but what they happen is when you go to the phone interview, once you pass the phone interview, they bring you on the plan to Seattle, to the headquarters. They organize an event where it's more like a happy hour thing, where you connect with some of the folks or leadership within the Amazon and chit chat. And the next day is your proper loop interview. And that's like a 2-day event that a company organizes. So they bring the potential candidates over here, have them go through a little bit of a background experience and, walk them through the company, give them a little tour of the headquarters, I believe. And that's the interview process. But how I got here, yes. I think the potential reason was basically I was in the product and finance mixed space at JP Morgan. And that's how I basically landed at Amazon. Not that I planned or not that I thought I would be applying for the job from coast to coast, because I had no plan to move. But I'm glad I made a move. It's a pretty happy state right now.
So Manan, talk about agility and adapting from a strategy perspective. You certainly have done that on a personal level. You moved from the East Coast to the West Coast, am I right? And from financial services into online retail/retail tech. I mean, that's a big switch.
That is absolutely a big switch. That was one of the challenges when I moved, is to adopt. So they're like, I have to adopt in a couple of ways where I was switching from financial services to sector, financial services to retail and technology sector. That was the first switch. Plus my job role is completely program management or product management in a way. Nothing with financial reporting. Obviously, a little bit of accounting and finance background is helping me out. Being a part of the broader accounting organization at Amazon. But I'm not a part of operational accounting teams, which is totally, I'm a part of internal tech team. So it's totally program management, driving the technology roadmap, working with the other fintech folks within the organization to drive those things. So it's a big shift. How I adopted it, I'm still adopting it. It's still almost a year. It's a long path. It's not a switch on and off kind of thing. So I'm still learning quite a bit. Definitely, I'm getting better and better every day. I'm being challenged every day. But that is the fun part of putting my step in the cold water. I don't know how cold that is, but I just put a step in. And once your feet get deeper, you kind of get used to it. You kind of get that becomes normal. So that's how I took an approach that, hey, I'm taking a leap. I'm fine. That's something I was being comfortable in my zone in the past few years. So that's something I wanted to do, or something I expected, something I signed up for. And adoption wise, I think it was a little bit challenging since everything was remote, because we are still remote. I think we are given timeline to go back to office by July, but I don't know on that one either. So we are still remote. I haven't seen or met many of those folks that I work with in person. So yeah, it's everything, networking, building relationships, and everything is basically online. So that has been a little bit challenging. I think I find chatting and building relationship in person is more fruitful. But everyone is going through this, and everyone is adopting their own way of it. So certainly a challenge, but it's not doable.
Yeah, Manan, it's interesting what you say. I mean, you joined in the mid of last year, around June last year, am I correct?
That is correct.
And that was when the lockdown levels were pretty stringent in the US and also other parts of the world. And I'm just thinking, one of your leadership principles at Amazon is around earning trust as much as it is about taking risk. Now, when you're entering a new organization such as Amazon, and you've got to earn trust remotely. Tell us a little bit, how did you go about doing that?
You just, I think deliver results is a part of earning trust in a way, I believe. My main goal was, for the first year, at least for the 2020, for the first 6 months, was earn trust was a big thing since I was new in the company and within a challenging position. I took a little different route where I personally scheduled one-on-one with senior managers and whoever I work with, right, to understand a little bit on the personal side as well, outside the work zone. So to get a little bit more familiar what the values, personal values are, and what the communication style is, how they prefer to communicate, et cetera, et cetera. So these are more like you have to know by talking to people. You cannot directly ask them, hey, how do you prefer to communicate? But you kind of realize in the communication that this is what the person's expectations are. This is what person like to do, or you prefer this way or that way. But my main goal was for 2020 was to deliver results, which is basically deliver the end result for whatever the expectations are for my first 6 months at Amazon. That's what I do it, and that's and I think I'm very lucky. I got an opportunity to work with some of the directors within a few projects, which is a pretty great opportunity. You get a lot of visibility around there. I got a great reviews during my quarter end reviews processes, and I'm blessed to have managers like this. But yeah, it's basically just performing to your best and delivering results. Just meet the expectations and go beyond wherever you can. I think that's how you earn the trust.
Manan, your CEO, who needs absolutely no introduction to our listeners, says you can work long, you can work hard, or you can work smart. But at Amazon, you can't choose 2 out of the 3. You've just got to choose the one. So talk to us about your first 100 days on the job versus your expectations, and also how that perhaps stacked up against the other big companies you worked for.
First 100 days. I find it very interesting. I think work hard and smart. That were I know you cannot choose, but I just decided to do it that way. But 100 days were what my expectations. They really met because I've heard when you work for a big retailer, Amazon, tech companies like Amazon, Google, you have a high bar, right, of delivery. You get a high bar. There are people expecting a lot from you compared to from the financial institution where there's a more constant path to perform and grow. While over here is more like entrepreneurial mindset. You put more, you get more in a way. So yeah, that kind of shift. So it was kind of challenging. At the same time, first 100 days was obviously challenge moving from a different industry, adjusting to different industry, which is studying or understanding the company culture, basically, what the expectation would be differ from my previous experience. So that was a part of it. Learning program management was another part of it, which is basically I never had like full-time PM profile before. So I was partly reporting and partly project management, which was a mixed role. But this was 100% program management. So I spent a good amount of time online doing some of the classes on LinkedIn on the program management, learning the product life cycle, whatever that can help me to adjust to this product. So right in the beginning, before even I joined, I had a few chats with my manager. I kind of had the idea what kind of projects I'll be leading. Getting on board, I was totally ramping up from the first day one, started connecting with people, started scheduling one-on-one to understand, hey, what I need to do, what's the expectation for me, et cetera, et cetera. The first 100 days were challenging, but that's where you lay your strong pillar. That's where you lay the foundation with the company and the culture, how much you fit in the culture and how you see yourself in the near future. I think first 100 days were absolutely eye-opening. It's like, hey, wow, this is different or this is not different. This is very similar to what I used to do. This is very different from what I used to do. Those kind of analysis, I kind of did it on myself. And stuff challenging, rewarding, I would say.
Manan, your position of program manager, can you explain to us a little bit about how that fits into the Amazon management or organizational structure? Is it on the finance side? Is it on the operations side of the business or somewhere else?
Yeah, so I'm a part of overall CFO of a financial organization. So within finance, it's broken down by reporting teams, central corporate FP&A teams, corporate accounting teams. So I'm a part of accounting teams, overall accounting organization. Within accounting organization, we have a lot of tech teams which basically support the worldwide accounting teams, which are located globally. And I'm the PM on one of those tech teams. So just to give high-level brief on what our team does is basically, we have a set of BI engineers and data engineers in my team, and we support automation processes within the accounting space. Now, there are the different mechanisms we use to get those processes in. So my role is basically to design those roadmap for these folks and partner with my managers. Also, there's like a broader fintech organization within Amazon or within finance overall, and they lead more of the strategic process or strategic automation, like at the very high level. So I partner with them on some of the projects as well, including working with for internal folks in accounting. And that's basically the entire sum of the role that I do. It's managing a lot. It's obviously managing multiple priorities, multiple programs at the same time. Understanding the requirements, see if the internal tools that we have can support. If not, then guide them through the proper channel to get in touch with the broader fintech organization where they have more capacity and more broader set of tools and technology they can support with.
You know, Manan, what you're saying is so important, and it was one of the reasons why I set up StratAstute Consulting, because where things were at when I was still employed and running a audit and risk management division was that I was deeply concerned about how quickly business models are needing to adapt to the technological innovation, and the fact that the finance or accounting functions are normally the last to adopt a new way of doing things, because it's such a sensitive part of the business. And it's interesting to hear the strong link I'm hearing between finance and tech, and even in the organizational structure, how that's enabled. So that's maybe a point forward for the CFOs and the finance managers listening in today. So let's have a look at the business model, and business models, to understand them, the operational aspects of it probably makes you a better accountant, a better marketer, a better leader in the business. And it seems like you've got exactly that context. And Amazon has quite a specified philosophy around its business model, looking at the 4 pillars of customer obsession rather than competitive focus, passion for invention, commitment to operational excellence, and long-term thinking. Share with us, Manan, from your 12 months that you've been there, how is this ethos enabled in the business models and in the systems at Amazon?
So yeah, you are right in the sense that finance and accounting, like finance systems, are the last one to adopt. I think the challenge that I see at Amazon, and the same challenge I saw at JP Morgan, right? The bigger the company gets, they try to merge with other companies or they try to buy small companies. Now, all these financial transactions, every company has different recording systems. Every transaction is recording different systems. I see it right now why we have at Amazon bunch of systems, like a numerous amount of data systems that to bring the data in. And the challenge is basically, how do you bring in one table, like one form and fashion? Right, and that's exactly the same challenge we had at JP Morgan. So that's why the requirement, that's why the adopting technology get a little complex. Like you have new technology that might support 1 or 2 systems, might not support other systems, but that doesn't work with, entire system. So then we have to adopt the third workaround to bring those things and develop or create a business model in such a way that, these pipelines to connect those financial systems become much more streamlined and much more efficient. And I think for the small company, this is something when you're growing up, this is something you might want to think about. Like, how do you design financial systems? As you grow bigger, how can you say, because when you're growing, when you're rising up, like these are the last things that, you know, most of the people think about. Like, how do you design financial systems? Like, they are more focused on growing business, how to get more revenue, how to get more, you know, profit or reduce expenses, etc. But these are one of the biggest expenses right now in every big corporation, I believe, which is spending a whole lot of resources and investment on financial systems, basically how to bring into consolidated form and fashion to streamline. But yeah, the way the business model is, it's very confined that Amazon, I have been listening to some of the podcasts on the other channels as well, that, hey, Amazon wants to do everything for everybody. That's a very high level motto. And that's where it started with the bookstore, and they want the company expanded to go everywhere. The other thing is, excuse me, it's growing in a space where financial adoption got critical, and like I mentioned earlier, it's getting a little challenging. But I think the way the company structure is divided is basically every business has their own financial control teams, which basically monitor transactions and make sure, you know, the financials are in place. And within that, they have a corporate reporting teams, which basically how it comes together is all different financial teams. They manage the control, they manage the integrity, they make sure the financials look right, the product reporting looks right, transactions look right. Then it comes to different data channel. It comes to the corporate team, which basically have the process to consolidate those processes and finally put it in a financial statement. That's more like a basic structure that I saw at JP Morgan as well, where different businesses own their control process, like devices, or let's say Amazon consumer business, or AWS finance, or you say Prime Finance, digital studios. Everything in Amazon has their own financial control team and accounting teams which manage to get the financial right. And then it consolidated in the corporate accounting or corporate reporting space, where you get all the data massaging, whatever the process they have in place to put the financial statement together. And it's a very similar model to JP Morgan that they had for consumer business and consumer banking, retail banking, corporate asset management.
Manan, it sounds like innovation and, of course, your passion for invention is like the air you breathe, or the blood in the Amazon business. From a management or leadership perspective, that means that the appetite for what I call failure or things not quite working as they do is possibly quite high. And you know, with any responsibility, with any kind of opportunity to apply a risk mindset is a responsibility to take accountability for it. So in your teams, how do you manage that balance, particularly in a space like finance, between technology and innovation and making sure that you're delivering financial and operational excellence?
That is true, and it is recently how we do it is basically we are encouraged to try different things. Like, you know, if I say, hey, I want to do something differently, or I want to see if this work out or not, there's no opposition. But at the same time, you have to make sure that, you know, like you said, it's connecting with the finance and accounting numbers. That you want to make sure whatever you do is basically, you know, having the control process in place to prove that you have done your due diligence and make sure the numbers or whatever the reporting numbers are right. So there is a terminology within accounting. We use one-way door and two-way door. You probably heard it too. One-way door provide a solution where there is no back out. If you want to reverse it, you cannot reverse it. The two-way door is basically once you put it in, and if it doesn't work out, you can go back to the old, which was technically the legacy, right? So most of the things we put it right now, most of the time it's a two-way door to make sure, until that process matures, I would say. Mature means adaptation, right? Let's say I put an automation, we provide a solution together for the people. We make sure we go through enough of the testing side of it. We make sure that, hey, if within certain time frame, let's say if the process breaks or due to technical difficulties or operational difficulties, right, issues, the roadblocks, if the process fails, will the reporting side is very critical in the time, right, like month end closing and quarter end closing, where the number has to go out and things like that. So in order to make sure we do that, we provide enough support. We make sure that if this doesn't work, we have a backup plan, which is like, two-way door in a way. So most of every aspect we do things like what if something goes wrong. Additionally, as a tech team, there are parts that you have to partner with the controls team to make sure that the data you're bringing in or data pipeline you're creating is it's compliance to the regulations, stuff like that. So obviously there are controls at the process place, there are controls at the technological space as well. That whatever data, because very similar, like I mentioned earlier, because of the complexity, the data can be anywhere and everywhere, but not all the systems are compliance pieces, right? You can find reference data, yeah, you can use it, but is it compliant? Compliant means that it has passed all the regulation, it's good to use for reporting. Some of them are, some of them are not. So you have to make sure that as a part of the team, your data, whatever solutions you are producing or creating is compliant, which is basically, audit acceptable in a way. You don't want to create the solution which is, yeah, it works, but when you have to prove the ground, it doesn't stand for it. So those are the few things that you have to keep in mind when we think about a solution. And being a global company, we do want to invest and innovate in more efficient way. So let's say we try to find like a global solution, which is global means the process or the solution can be adopted at more broader team rather than specific to one team. So that way, people save more time and less investment being made, because if two or three teams are kind of going through the same process, which happens in accounting, is basically accounting when you're broken down by North America, EMEA, APAC region, some of the processes are very similar or very same. So if you automate for one process, one region, for example, you might want to think about going more broader, thinking big, hey, is this process being similar to the other regions as well? Does it apply to the other regions? And if so, what are the options that we can, release this product more globally in a way, so more people can get benefit out of it rather than just one team focus.
Manan, two of the concepts that Amazon focuses on, and that is customer obsession and of course technology. They're moving and changing at such a rapid pace. How does one adapt and respond to those changes whilst maintaining operational excellence? And this is not only in accounting, this may be in your operational models also. And compliance.
Yeah, customer obsession, I think, when we say customer obsession, is not always external customers. So for me, I'm not on the front line or on the sales and marketing team where I interact with external customers. My customers are internal, right? So there's a different requirement when you look at the customers. So if someone in the marketing or sales, they have a different customer requirement. They look at customer differently, right? That, hey, what the customers need outside Amazon? For me, or for the accounting or finance, which are the customers are within Amazon, but there's a different lenses to look at that way. Customer obsession, in a way, in my understanding, or at least the way I look at it, is basically understanding what the requirements are, what they need, and providing the best solution that they can efficiently use it through it. Now, if it has to meet the compliance requirement, yes, that's the part of my requirement. That, hey, if the customer needs something and something more compliant or something more regulated, then it's my job to design a roadmap, a product roadmap, such a way that, you know, I meet that customer's need, whether it's internal. Externally, not way sure about how the sales and marketing and the customer relations at Amazon work. I'm not being part of it, but yeah, the whole idea is to basically understand the problem before you design the product. I think understanding the problem or what the issue you are solving for is much bigger than what product you want. Before going to any design or product or thinking about something, we put a problem statement in place. So what are the problems we solve it for? That's the first thing we want to know. And then we design the product and then determine, like, you know, who the stakeholders and that need to get involved. But at least from our standpoint, the first focus is what problem are we solving?
Manan, just taking a hypothetical example to illustrate that. So I was listening to you speak and thinking to ask you this question: is Amazon considering distributed ledger systems? So if you look at your current accounting systems of debit and credit, whether you're an SME or you Amazon, we're all working off that accounting system. Is there a case for looking at blockchain and distributed ledger systems as a potential future solution? Are you guys looking at it?
I haven't heard any movement in that direction. We are still, like, you know, using the same systems. And I think technologically blockchain it's been here, but it's pretty brand new in a way. I don't know if it's established enough to be, you know, adopted within such a big organization. So not that I've heard of, but I'm pretty sure it will be challenging. And in the coming future, I'm not really, I don't have a clear idea on that. Not that I've heard of. I know some of the small companies started adopting it. Well, I read it, and a lot of people, a lot of small companies and things are adopting that way. And I think that will be the future. But I think the old legacy system will still be around for a little bit, I would say, because a lot of big companies, a lot of financial structure of big companies are dependent and, you know, a base of the systems. So yeah, I think we still face a challenge to adopt the system, how to integrate within different systems. So having the whole entire, I would say, infrastructure in place, it will take some time and good amount of investments, I would say.
Thanks, Manan. So let's turn our attention then to the leadership culture, which is the space you're working in at Amazon. And as we've said, the numbers are just astronomical. Your vision is big. And the approach that Amazon has is unapologetically bold. I mean, you want to be the best company across various aspects on Earth, not in the world, on Earth, right? So talk us through what it feels like to be in the leadership seat at Amazon, and how do leaders at Amazon walk the talk, as it were?
So I think it's quite amazing when I started and when I went through my time at Amazon so far of 11 months. I have never seen or have never been exposed to the company culture as stronger as Amazon, I would say. The leadership principle we mention probably so many conversations every day. We drive by that. That basically creates the whole Amazon culture. Every process, every decision we make, or every conversation, like the big decision we make, or anything at Amazon, even social or even social event, networking event, that all are based on, let's say, leadership principle. Like, how do we make sure we abide by those things? Like, let's say, how do we know we deliver results? Or let's say, if something is slowing down, we use those terms, like, hey, we need to deliver results. Or let's say, who take the ownership of that? Let's say, how do we know that we are innovating? Are we just automating the process, or do we know there's a different way to do it? Or do we know there's a better way to do it? How we do it, that basically, when we hear the leadership, I have heard Jeff Bezos few times, and not in person, but obviously now it's virtual, but all on company all hands. And now Andy Jesse, I've heard him a couple times as well. And some of the examples that walk through us is basically driving these leadership principles for your success at Amazon. You know, how to use them or how to leverage them. And even when I talk to my manager, senior managers within the company, these are basically your lever points that you can adopt, or you should adopt, I think. And I basically connect for some of those at personal level too, like long-term thinking and stuff like that. So I had very streamlined mindset to adopt these. And yes, delivering that in a workspace is obviously sometimes challenging, right? Because every person has a different way of thinking. That is one principle we have is disagree, have a backbone and disagree, which basically not everyone's going to agree on everything. Two people I work with, not everyone will agree with it, but at the same time, we need to move forward. So you decide whatever the best solution and just put a pedal on it and move it. Adoption wise, yeah, it's basically out there. It's not that something you have to do consciously to, you know, promote these leadership principles. It just come out of you as you work through it, as you know, ingrain the Amazonian way of working. It kind of get ingrained because you use it on an everyday basis. You hear on an everyday basis. You learn from those principles on an everyday basis. So if example I can give you is basically if I have an issue or a problem, like how to solve it, things like that, I go back, open those principles, like, and see which one is the best apply and how can I find solution to it. You know, one is dive deep. So whenever I think that, hey, you know, I understand the requirement, this is what is needed. If I want to make it look like a second look, if I want to take a second look, I'll maybe I want to dive a little bit deeper, you know, see what else can be done, what else can be automated, what's the other way we can look at it, things like that. So at Amazon, I don't think it has been a challenge to promote the company culture. It's already been ingrained for the most part. So at least in me, for the most part, even in a year, I feel like I've been at Amazon for quite a while now. I was just chatting with one of my colleagues yesterday on some of the things, and he spoke. I was talking in a certain way, and he only told, "You talk like a veteran already." And I'm like, "No, it hasn't been a year yet." But you know, because you're involved in so many things at Amazon that you keep talking about this stuff, keep knowing about this stuff. So at least that's my perspective. I know people have different style and adoption and speed of adopting in certain environment, certain way. At least it hasn't been a challenge for me to adopt, hey, this is the mindset, I know it. The only surprising, or not surprising, but the only interesting or exciting part is how the overall company adopted. I never expected this, but it's adopted company-wide at such a good level. So.
Manan, your background is in financial services, and like mine, I guess in healthcare and pharma, it's a highly regulated environment. And from there, you moved to quite an entrepreneurial, agile, more kind of healthier risk appetite type of environment. Is there something that Amazon does within its leadership development programs that's unique to create such a sense of tangible culture for every person in the organization? Because it is unusual. You know, normally when the company is small, then that culture is tangible when you walk into that small office. But as you scale up and grow, you lose a little bit of that essence. What has Amazon done to maintain that?
To maintain it, like I said, it's more in the working lifestyle itself. But from the culture standpoint, it basically, I don't know, but I have heard that Amazon has a lot of on-site events, right, to promote the culture. It's a part of the culture's adaptations start with the interview process. When I was interviewing, So the recruiter itself tells you, or you provide the guideline through it, that some of the reference material we want to refer by is this basically 14 leadership principles that Amazon has. And some of those are already mentioned in 1991 or 1997, the first shareholder letter that went out. And the fun fact about Amazon is with every shareholder letter, it's always it started with the 1997, the first shareholder letter, then the current year shareholder letter. I think the whole culture is developed that way, that it has a long-term thinking, and the way it is being assured is basically whatever we thought or whatever the company's standard mindset or the goal of the company was back 20 plus years ago, it still exists, it still abide by. And that's what the leaders iterate, right, during the annual or the quarterly meetings. Adaptation-wise, in an interview process, they get leadership principles. The questions during the interview process, and I mentioned it in my article that I wrote a few months ago on LinkedIn about some of my interview experiences, is the questions are kind of aligned to determine how the candidate performs or adopt those leadership principles. Yes, you want to present metrics, and numbers are very important, but at the same time, Amazon does not only look for the best candidate for the job, but also best candidate for the company who can adopt the company, the way of working, the way of the pace the company works with, the complexity and the ambiguity that exists in the company or in the space right now. Some of the things I can say, few times, we don't have clear path or the answers to the decision we make. But that's the fun part, scratching the big giant and finding out the small details. Like, where can I find small answers, or where can I find, because you never know where you find directions. With the company at this large scale, there's the data everywhere. There's the link everywhere. When I try to look for something, that's when the candidates, resilience comes down, like which way we want to go. Like, if you have clear path, yeah, you know where to walk, you're going where you want to go. This is the destination. The real thing is basically how to adopt or how to cope with the situation where you don't know the answers to it, and how to get the answers, how to get the solution you want, how to get some help you want. That's how I think it's basically adopted throughout the whole company line. I mean, it's not only finance and accounting. Even though if I talk to someone in a devices organization or AWS organization, it's pretty similar mindset where we go through. Obviously, the details are different, and some of the principles apply in certain organizations more versus some of them applies a little bit less in the other organization. But that's basically the DNA of it, I would say.
Manan, those 14 principles and your business philosophy, are they somehow incorporated in your performance management systems for employees in your organization, or perhaps your leaders?
It is. It is incorporated in certain ways where during the annual reviews, the feedback mechanism is created around those leadership principles. So, for example, if I give an example, if I have, as a manager, a review and an analyst for somebody, then I would say this candidate or this person has demonstrated strong ability in incorporating and implementing this principle. And to support those principles, why I can say this is basically, this is why I think these candidate is strong in these principles, or is need improvement, or let's say, has an opportunity within these principles. So that's where the whole annual review program is structured around, or annual review process is structured around, I would say.
Yeah, Manan, recruitment and the recruitment process is always an important part for any organization. But,
Correct.
Just listening to how your culture works, I can now really appreciate why there's such a huge emphasis on getting the right person into Amazon, because you and I have both been in investment spaces, you from an analyst side, myself from an investor relations side. And we know how investors work in the world of instant gratification that we have. What one finds is that short-termism or a myopic vision is really how many people in life make their decisions. And there are very few people who are comfortable working in an environment that presents uncertainty, disruption, and with that, long-term thinking. It's almost a paradox. So really, really interesting. Thank you, Manan, for sharing those thoughts. You know, I had a look at your Q1 results. Operating cash flow increased 69% to $67 billion. Free cash flow sitting at $26 billion. Your net sales increased by 44% to $108.5 billion. And the numbers don't end there. Just this week, the brand protection report was released by Amazon. More than $700 million invested to protect stores from fraud and abuse, and more than 10,000 people employed to do that. Over 6 million attempts to create malicious selling accounts were blocked, more than 10 billion suspected bad listings blocked. And the transparency serialization service, you say, enabled protection of more than 500 million product units. And then over the COVID period, Amazon partnered with about 1.9 million SMEs. I mean, those numbers are really, really impressive. When forced to choose, and your CEO, Jeff Bezos, made a really interesting statement. He said, when forced to choose between optimizing the appearance of GAAP accounting and maximizing the value of future cash flows, he said, we'll choose the cash flows. Now, from a finance and risk management perspective, how do you achieve two things that your company philosophy asks for? And how do you achieve the balance between inventing and simplifying versus diving deep into the numbers and diving deep enough so that by the time you release your results, you know that those numbers are valid and they have integrity?
That's true, that and I have heard from the other channels as well that Amazon put a big emphasis on cash flow, which is basically selling more and more products at less profit margin. I think there was a time when, I forgot the years, but I was listening to this. There was a time when Amazon has most top revenue, but it was making very little profit because of the least profit margin. But that has always been our leadership goal, is to be, sell as many products, as many units, basically quantity over the short-term profit, which is basically we want to create a large customer base, a long-term relationship with the customer, rather than focusing on short-term profit and short-term customer base. So this has been a motto, and this is where the company is going. And every business we try to do is basically the less expensive or the least expensive compared to the other competitors. We go less expensive one, but we want to get long-term customer base, basically, earn customer loyalty, customer obsession. That's one of our principles. That's what we go by. How we ensure the integrity of the numbers, and that is basically a question not only for Amazon, I believe, all the public companies. How do they ensure at this scale? And the answer lies in the company structure itself, the team structure that I explained, the control teams that are in place, right? Every team has their own control. There's a team, the compliance team at Amazon, which basically ensure that all the processes, at least I can speak a little bit for the accounting side of it, that whatever processes we have in place, they're compliant. If let's say, if any of the processes is resulting in the financial statement, like journal entry or creating a journal entry, the numbers hitting a financial statement by any means. The processes have to go through a certain control process, right? Compliance process, to make sure the processes has, right controls, the calculations are right, things like that. And there was another part I was mentioning earlier in our conversation, is as the tech team, we automate these processes, it's our job to make sure that the root numbers or whatever the data system you're pulling on are compliant system. The number is legit, to take it further down and put a logic in place, give the report to the accountants, and accountants can take it downstream, whatever the process is, whatever they do. So it's more like a ladder process. It's not one team manages all. It's more like agile seating, where you get different teams work together to get numbers right, and that's how the model is basically. For devices, they have certain controls in place. For AWS, there are certain controls in place because their whole business is based on technology and cloud business, right? While the devices is more on some of the retail aspects of it. Some of them is the development aspect of it, like Echo devices or whatever. Digital business, with the studios and other, they have different compliance piece involved with it to make sure that whatever they are producing, whatever they are, it's a compliance, compliantly accepted. But I think that's pretty much the whole core of it. Yet there are bits and pieces that are different everywhere based on what business you're part of. But at the financial level, yes, there is a compliance team who look at the financial data, and these numbers look correct based on, it's a corporate finance, that's the job of it. At accounting level, your job or the accounting team's job is to make sure the numbers are right, whatever numbers we are giving to the corporate reporting team that are correct. So different letter, different control process.
Right, Manan, so if I put my audit and risk committee hat on, the top risks in any company would have cybersecurity on it, and the World Economic Forum top risks report, of course, echoes that. Tech being such a large part of your business, what can you share with us about how cybersecurity is managed as a risk at Amazon?
Not much. I don't have insight into that side of the business, how it is maintained. Like, for at least from the internal standpoint, from whatever I have read externally on the not social media, externally on some of the papers, is basically, I think mostly cloud, which is AWS. I believe that's the core business that manages the infrastructure. I think AWS was created to support the Amazon retail business, but then it kind of grew their customer base outside Amazon, and now it's this. Amazon has two core. AWS is the biggest business within Amazon, followed by the retail side of it. So AWS is really growing the cloud business, and I think with that, I know cybersecurity and all security is a big risk right now, where you have multiple data centers and within everywhere in the globe, physical data centers as well as on system information, et cetera, et cetera. So there are definitely different teams. From my understanding, there are various teams that basically look at the security from the system level and from the data center level. So they have teams that manage security at the data center, physical data center, as well as the system level as well, encryption. And AWS has a whole different suite for the security level. So they offer like security services, I believe, to the third company or the third party as well. So yeah, no, I'm sorry, don't have much insight, so I don't want to speak a lot to it. How is it being handled? But this is basically, from my understanding, how the cybersecurity or security in overall general is led by AWS. Sure.
Thanks, Manan. So you mentioned AWS, and that has representation in South Africa, in the mother city called Cape Town. And for that reason, there were a lot of South Africans in the tech space who were quite excited to hear more about our conversation today, and I'm sure they're listening to this podcast. So I hope you guys are taking something away from it. And, you know, something that's bugging me, I'm sure in the beginning I referred to your IPO price as 18 Rand. My apologies. I was thinking of the South African investment that Amazon has made. It's of course $18, right?
Right.
So Manan, if we now look into the future, and I see Amazon as almost a pioneer of where business is going to in the future, along, of course, with other tech companies. You know, your CEO says, I believe that you have to be willing to be misunderstood if you're going to innovate. And it seems that Amazon's time has come now. So, and I see the balance between being profit centric and growing at the rate you've grown, but also starting to take a more responsible stance around socioeconomic policies, signing the climate pledge that you've signed. Of course, there are interest in going into space through Blue Origin. And also in your business model, there's diversification that's looking really interesting. The one that I picked up and I want to hear more about is the entertainment space, particularly with live sports streaming. Really, they've started with NFL, football, and of course, AWS are partners in Formula One. And with all this happening, you're going through a leadership change from Jeff Bezos to Andy Jassy, who's currently the AWS head. So putting your investment analyst hat on, if you are looking at the business and the changes that are happening in the external landscape, and also those happening within Amazon, what are the Amazon prospects? And how would this influence business models going forward?
In my understanding, Amazon is this pretty stable, consistent growth space right now, where we have new businesses coming in. Like obviously, it's going to Blue Origin is outside the Amazon umbrella, but inside. Not sure if a lot of people have heard of Project Kuiper. Project Kuiper is basically a satellite business, satellite internet providing, just like we probably they're probably in the news as well, that the Amazon is planning to, or at least is working towards having the low orbit satellite to provide internet to the most rural places of the earth. So they're going to create a whole cluster of a satellite to provide internet. That's one of the business. One of the other beliefs was getting into automated delivery business, which is more like Zoox is more tech. I think it's more automated driving taxi service, like Uber, but driverless in a way. So they recently acquired Zoox, which is automated self-driving automotive company in a way. So we're working towards that. So some of future initiatives is pretty bright, and I think we are moving in the right direction. Other than that, I see pretty consistent growth with AWS and consumer business. I know we have live streaming where we are adopting more and more franchises to broadcast. I have heard Andy Jassy a few times doing a town hall, and his vision is as equivalent as Jeff Bezos. I mean, he was the head of AWS since beginning, and AWS has captured a humongous amount of growth in the past few years. So now you're taking that leadership at the company level. So I'm kind of excited, very excited, like to see, how this growth mindset we can adopt throughout the whole entire company. What other businesses and what other industry that Amazon is launching next into. And right now I don't have any perspective, but even from the future standpoint, I do see companies' consistent growth in AWS and retail business. As these new businesses get onboarded, it takes some time to ramp off, but I'm pretty confident on the stability of the company. Yeah, it has been ups and downs time to time due to some of the spaces some of the industry we try to get into is, some of them are critical and not supported or supported other ways. But from leadership standpoint, I feel Andy Jassy is an exceptional leader. Currently, haven't had a chance to work for AWS, but at least I have been able to have his thoughts went through some of the on-hand calls within the company and outside interviews, stuff like that. So Jeff Bezos walking out, Andy Jassy coming in, I'm positive about that.
Yeah, I think when the leadership change happened at Apple, there were concerns in the market of how that would pan out, but that story seemed to have, continued to produce the results. So, Manan, with your investor hat on, ESG is becoming a big priority within the investment space. And Amazon signed the climate pledge, whereby they say they're going to meet the Paris Agreement targets 10 years earlier, be net zero by 2040, and by 2025 have 100% renewables. From your space within the organization, are you seeing your policies and your way of working shift towards a more environmentally friendly / socially oriented approach?
We do actually. Like I personally, it doesn't impact my work. Not that I have to do a lot, but I think the most of the pledge impact is basically, the shipping side of it, and obviously some of the logistic parts of it. So when I see it, we not recently, like a few years back, we partnered with the Rivian, and Rivian is again electric automotive company, which basically we invested, I believe Amazon invested $1 billion to have custom design delivery vans, all electric delivery vans. So we are shifting that from having the normal delivery van combustion to 100% electric delivery van. We already have started rolling out those vans in California. I haven't seen a while, but I think by 2025 or 25, we probably have 100,000 electric vehicles. That way, Amazon is the top renewable energy buyer in Europe. They're investing in like wind farms and having solar systems involved in the fulfillment center or offices and stuff like that. Even over here too, like Seattle, in support, we have a whole Amazon has sponsored a whole climate pledge arena, which is basically a sports arena, which is run on 100% carbon-free renewable energy. I don't know when it's the opening date. I'm not quite sure on that, but yeah, that has been started. On the other forefront, there like there's a constant improvement in how we produce our Amazon devices, like from the recycled products, also from the box and shipping standpoint, how to design more efficient and more clean products or shipping, boxes and stuff like that. So it's making a lot of progress on that side. We have a whole sustainability teams within Amazon and initiatives going on, that a whole team support these kind of initiatives, like how do we come up with a better product, which is, create a less carbon emission or less carbon footprint. And it's like a whole different team. They have a whole different organization and a group of people that basically support these initiatives and incorporated or implemented throughout Amazon and externally.
Manan, that contextualizes very nicely what Jeff Bezos says. He says, always lean into the future and figure out what to do, because complaining isn't a strategy. And when it comes to sustainability programs, 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now, we certainly don't want to be complaining that we didn't do enough right now. Yeah? So, we're coming to the close of this conversation, unfortunately. And as much as we've spoken about the largeness of Amazon, the data-driven culture, the need for results, I found it interesting that Jeff Bezos says, in all of my best decisions in business and in life have been made with heart, intuition, guts, not analysis. So Manan, what advice do you have for our listeners of how to navigate this wave of uncertainty? You know, the uncertain road to 2030, where everything seems to be shifting and changing. In this climate, young people want to get into a profession that's going to feed their ambition and their needs. Those in career transitions are possibly looking for the next step in their career. And businesses, you know, have come through a really, really difficult 12 months, and there isn't still certainty on the horizon. So, you know, could you share with us your advice on where does the balance lie in terms of decision making between data-driven decision making and applying your gut feel?
Yeah, it's very mixed. I would say don't go by either one of them blindly. But I say, like, a lot of times you know, what I have seen myself not doing it for years was getting out of the comfort zone. Like, you know, I never in my dream thought about, like, I want to work for Amazon one day, because I was always financial side of it, right? Not sure if I was able to, or if I can have an opportunity, I will have an opportunity to go through it. Obviously, you have heard, like, how complex and intimidating it gets to the interview process and stuff like that. Put yourself out there. When I applied for the job, not apply, when I was going through the interview process, I was going through the process for the experience, right? At least I want to experience how it feels. That was basically out of the comfort zone. Like, why do I want to do that? I was comfortable in my job at JP Morgan, doing well, quite well. Like, why do I want to do it? But I just wanted to get experience. Yeah, I don't know what it will lead me to, and that's the ambiguity, right? But I would say take that extra step, even though, let's say, it's not giving you short-term benefit, or you don't expect short-term benefit out of it. Take a step. It's not going to hurt you, right? You're just going to learn out of it. And I took this interview just to learn out of it. Like, you know, what the interview is like. Let me go and explore. Not that I didn't get enough time. I fully prepared. I gave like 2 months of preparation for an interview, like good of 6 weeks, that, you know, after work, I would spend a dedicated time to go through, like, what kind of question, how to prepare for it, things like that. So you definitely have to put an effort. But at the same time, I do want to tell, like, have a self-confidence. You know, I know in tough times you get breakdown, you tend to get more comfortable, and you're like, no, I'm fine. I don't want to take an extra step, but push yourself. Without that, I don't think stepping out of comfort zone will hurt you more than it will benefit. It will always benefit you, because it will explore or lead you to the way that you have never imagined, or you would not imagine being in a comfort zone. And trust your instinct. I would definitely say, like, have self-confidence and just go with it. Not that every time you hit the pedal, you're going to hit the target. But the worst going to happen is you're not going to hit the target. It's not the end of the world, right? So I truly say, have confidence, step out of the comfort zone, take some risk, and imagine yourself that you have never been wanted, or never been imagined. Like, I have never been imagined to be at Amazon, but this opportunity came in, and I was like, yeah, sure, I'll take it. Not that don't restrict yourself, don't box yourself. I've been living on the East Coast for 15 years, and I was like, yeah, why do I want to move? I'm comfortable here. I bought a house in the last 5 years. I was settled down, and then this came. So, like, why not? You know, so I just moved my whole 15, 20 years of life on the East Coast, took it down here. But it got better. So
Manan,
I hope this helped. Yeah.
There's no growth without some discomfort, is there?
It is the discomfort feeling, like getting out of it. But I think the best part is to go through it, right? And to learn from it. So I always have a learning, open mindset, and a little bit of self-confidence, and a pinch of luck will come by itself if you have everything else.
Manan, thanks so much for sharing your insights and experiences from really a impressive tech story and putting it in such a human way, and really just giving hope and encouragement to those out there who want to be future Amazon employees or investors or entrepreneurs out there who want to pivot their businesses and you know, look at future-proof strategies. Manan, you and I, in addition to finance and investments, also share a common passion for Formula One. There's no race this weekend. But you know, Formula One is looking at the US markets. Are there any bucket list races for you, Manan, in your off time?
Interestingly, I was talking to my friend just past few days, and he's interested. He's into Formula One as well. I'm like, hey, I'm thinking about going to Texas in October for the race weekend. He's like, yeah, I'll join. So that's one of my bucket. Obviously, my dream is to go through like entire one season, like travel with each and every country with Formula One. So take a year off or a few months off, like 8 to 9 months off, travel to the whole season. But the most recent, hopefully I can make it. Hopefully you know, it's not rescheduled or canceled due to pandemic. But I'm planning to go to Austin, Texas in October for the race weekend. So looking forward to that.
Fantastic. I'm jealous, and it sounds like our vision boards look very similar. So Manan, once again, thank you so much for taking time out and sharing your insights. Listeners, to you, thank you for sharing your time, and I hope you've gleaned a little bit from Manan, what Manan's had to share. Manan, you referenced an article that you've published on your experience at Amazon.
I did. I forgot the exact thing. I'm sorry?
Could you share that with us?
Yeah. So I share my experience a little bit more share my own experience, how the interview process was. With these, it got a little bit confusing, like, you know, how many phone interviews, how many loop interviews, how they work, etc., etc. So I just tried to lay down in that article, just step by step, what's going to happen from the recruiting person contacting you to all the way to the offer. So I have laid out my process, like how it happened, what are some of the important questions that it's going to ask, and how to answer them, or how to respond to those interview questions in more efficient and more kind of Amazonian way. So this was my take on it. Obviously, it's more from the program management standpoint. That's my role. If you're applying for the tech role, there will be like a tech piece involved with it, which could be a little bit complex, where they give you like a tech scenario or a problem scenario, and you have to solve from like programming, whatever job profile you're applying for. The job profile I have doesn't include, or the interview that I had doesn't include the tech aspect of it, but it does cover the major points that an interview can go through over from the behavioral questions or situational questions from the program management standpoint. So I hope that helps. It provides enough clarity from at least the process standpoint and some of the important aspects or critical aspects that one should keep in mind.
Fantastic. So we'll try and add those links for you to that article in the comments box. And if you go on to StratAstute Consulting's LinkedIn page, we'll share it there for you too. So thank you, Manan. Thank you, listeners, for joining us and for giving us your time. Please like and share this video so that more people can hear the story and make decisions based on that. We'll see you again on the 21st when we're talking shared value model and sustainable development. Till then, enjoy your weekend, and we'll see you again. Bye-bye.